Did I dye my hair specifically to fit the theme of this video? No, that would be insane. I did it for a mission trip to Guatemala where I built a 3-room schoolhouse out of recycled materials. It was so amazing, but we will talk about that in another video. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. When I am not making cosplays for myself or just random chaos builds for the sake of paying one to the universe, I do take commissions, and I usually only do commissions for headpieces, horns, custom things of that nature, and smaller props. I do not do full cosplay builds, and I do not sew for others. I'm suffering through that for me and me alone at this moment. And when I got this commission request, I was so excited. It combined so many of my favorite elements. First of all, a coronet. We love it. A Gothic style coronet, and inspired by Evil-Lyn from He-Man. I was so excited. I love making headpieces and horns. You can see some of the horns that I've made in this reel or short. What platform am I on? What variant of TikTok is this? Short, that's what it is, a short. You can see some of the other headpieces I've made, like this Oshun inspired headdress for my girl Black Unicorn cosplay, or Whitebeard's Naginata Murokumogiri, which I made for Garl's cosplay, or Garly. Oh my goodness, I am terrible. Her name's right here. I will link her information in the description. I am a scatterbrain today. So rather than continue to babble at you, let's get to work.
Alright, going to start by heating up some 2mm EVA foam with a heat gun and gently forming that around my light orb that I've also layered with a little bit of aluminum foil just to protect it from some of the heat. And though I'm not getting it that warm, I am wearing a sweater to protect my skin. Although, you know, I like it hot. I'm one of those people who needs like the fires of hell in my shower. That's me. I mean, like, how else are you gonna get clean? You gotta burn off that first layer of skin to get truly clean, you know? Now I'm moving on to the Warbler layer, gently heating and shaping that around the 2mm EVA foam, repositioning it as needed, and then just reheating and shaping it to try to get it as smooth as possible. I'm using a bit of gaffer's tape to keep the structure together and really give it a nice tight and snug fit, make sure I like the way that it's sitting, and cut away at the pieces that I don't really need. And you can just do that using scissors, pretty standard, easy to do. Using my favorite 14 gauge wire, I'm going to be constructing 3 posts for the top of the coronet. Off camera, I cut the top post, and right now I'm cutting out the side posts and bending them over on themselves to give them a little more strength. Then I twist the wire around itself a little bit more and curve it into the shape that I need. Now it's time to ribbon wrap, which I went into explaining a little more detail on my heat miser video, so I'm not going to be explaining it in a whole lot of detail, plus it's just smaller segments, so you get the point. Using a scrap of Warbler and a puncturing tool, I am making a little base for the attachment of the post to the coronet. To attach the side posts, I'm using a bit of hot glue to stabilize them and essentially get them into place. Because hot glue is thermoplastic and I am using things like foam and Warbler, it's going to bond very well. However, that little additional scrap of Warbler at the base there is going to act as our real anchor. There are going to be other things that I use to really secure this in the long run, but this is a great place to start and make sure that I have something I can attach to. Prior to attaching the posts, I took a rough aluminum foil pattern of the coronet shape, and now I'm creating a pleather cover that will go over it and essentially cover down all of those little bumps, nooks, and crannies and make everything all act as one piece. Next, I'm patterning the hood for the coronet, which will be made of a layer of pleather and a black poly lining. Now I'm patterning the hood to figure out where I want to place the red segments, which will be made out of satin. Though absolutely no one asked, I've always had this theory about what your personality type is based off of your black and pairing, and black and red is always that good classic staple. Usually you get like the black and pinks, they're very cute, little off the wall, slightly crazy. Black and purple, very dark, very poetic, love that. Black and green, you got your botanists, your earth hippies, the dark earth hippies, love them very much. And black and yellow, chaos creatures, absolute chaos creatures. The hood is up and it's on to spike creation. We're going to use aluminum foil to create 4 spikes, and then I'm going to cover them in Warbler. The Warbler I'm using this time is slightly different than the crystal art, and I'll explain it in better detail when we get to the skull creation.
Admittedly, I did a terrible job of capturing the paint job on these horns, so instead I decided to go and sub in a different pair of horns so you could see all of the detail in the way that I really like to paint bones and skeletal things.
We've got a Warbler base with some twine wrapped around it, and I've done a coat of black just to get it to a base. But we're going to start with some wood glue and some white acrylic paint, and that's where our base coat is going to be. You're not trying to get it to white, you want to get it to just a little off-white. Think about the color of bone. The wood glue is going to fill in those pores and cracks and kind of blend everything together so that way it all acts as one. For our second layer, we're going to add in a little bit of gloss Mod Podge and do the same again just to get a second coat and make sure we've got a very nice even coat before we start in on the details. And on the right, you can see our completed second coat. On the left, you can see the first coat, so that way we start to get rid of some of that black Warbler underneath, and you've got a nice solid off-white base. Now we're going to go in with some brown acrylic paint. I like to get in underneath the ridges of the twine and just into the little cracks and crevices that might still remain, and then just kind of brush them out a bit or rub them out a bit with a little bit of paper towel, or if you have some sort of cloth you prefer to use, you can use that as well. If you need a little more control in your shadowing, you can use a nice thin brush and get into the cracks, and then use another brush to kind of stipple it outward. For skeletal things, I like a bit of grunge. I like it to look dirty, so I like to use the paper towel method. Now I'm just going over some of the highlighted areas with just some white acrylic paint to give it a nice pop, really make all of those dark, grungy areas stand out.
You like? I'm calling her the Demoness Cleopatra, for sale in my Ko-Fi shop. Now, let's get back to the coronet.
I'm marking out where the rings on the back of each spike should hit. I want to create additional connection points because the commissioner wants to wear this with a veil or a variety of veils, and I want to make sure they can hang their veil in any way they please, so there's going to be a ring on the back of each spike. And now it's time for the skull creation. I made a ball out of aluminum foil, just a little bit smaller than the size of the skull I want to create. I am now using black art warbler to heat up with a heat gun and then stretch over the ball, which will give it a little bit of strength. We're going to use some foam clay to essentially give it that nice rounded shape, but this black art will really give us a nice strong base to work from. Black art warbler, much like crystal art warbler, is thermoplastic. It becomes blendable and stretchable when it's heated, and then once it cools off, it becomes really hard and firm. Unlike the crystal art, it comes out in flat sheets, so you don't have to blend it together like you do with the pellets, and you can much more easily stretch it over things, and it'll give us a nice strong base. Now that the warbler layer has been installed, we are going to use foam clay to fill in the eye sockets and to build up the area around the eyes. I want to make sure that that is really thick, very menacing. We want to give her some good shape, so we're going to build a base now and then wait for that to cure 24 hours before we add on top of it. Sculpting out a few additional details so that way those can also cure and be layered upon, but I wanted to give a small shout out to this 43-piece just basic clay toolkit from Michaels. Very helpful if you're going to be working with texturing or just doing design work in foam and clay. Now that the details have had time to cure, I am using Michaels foam clay to layer up the skull and give it a nice rounded shape, make sure we smooth out any bumps, lumps, and crevices, and really give us additional detailing work. I wouldn't say that Michaels foam clay is my favorite, but it does work really nicely for layering up, and it dries rather quickly, so it makes it a little bit easier to do that layering work. Using a sponge and a little bit of water, you can pat at the surface of the foam clay and blend in a lot of that finger texture. It'll also give the surface a nice porous look, which is great for skull and bones. And now we just repeat that process a few hundred times and we'll have a finished skull. Never be afraid to use your sculpting tools slightly unconventionally to do things like rolling out foam clay. Just use transfer paper or some sort of wax paper so that way you don't get the foam clay all over your rolling pin like I just did. And I guess it's really not unconventional to use a rolling pin to roll out foam clay. I just mean that it's unconventional in that I have not seen someone use a rolling pin to roll out foam clay. I'm certain it's been done, I just haven't seen it. But I'm also a bit of a visual, like a social hermit crab. So like I like what I like and I like to watch that on repeat till I die, you know? Though we gave her a great start, I want her to look very menacing. I want to make sure those pits look real sunken, so we gotta give her some really high cheeks. Make sure those brow bones are lifted. We want these cavities to look deep. Using my finger and a little bit of water, I am just blending in the edges and making sure that these pieces look like they are one. And as the great A.K. Wiru says, repeat till cry. When using wooden sculpting tools, I recommend adding a little bit of water to the surface to ensure that it doesn't stick to the tool. Moving along to the teeth, I am using 12 gauge wire to add posts in where I want the actual teeth to be. Then I'm going to use little scraps of warbler and heat them up to wrap them around the posts. I did a similar thing for the large fangs, and I just kept building on top of them using aluminum foil and warbler as my outer coating. I find that adding the posts and then shaping the warbler around each piece individually gives a better separation while still feeling connected, so that way it looks like teeth should look. And I also tend to use my nails a lot as sculpting tools. I mean, evolutionarily, I was given these perfect little scoopers at the edge of my fingers. Why wouldn't I use them? Because I had such a great time working on this, I wanted to put together a little veil for the final reveal to send to the client.
I just love Gothic headwear. If you would like to commission your own items, you can email me at theparkerprojects@gmail.com, or you can hit up my Ko-Fi shop or even DM me on Instagram. If you'd like to see more of my projects in real time, you can head on over to Instagram. I'm a little bit slow there right now because I am working on katsu preparation. I have so many big builds coming to you, and I recorded them. So yes, you will be getting a lot of stuff very soon. Well, my friends, that's the end, but we'll be back to craft again, especially if you like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much for stopping by.